Welcome back. All right, so with the season about 20% of the way done, the regular season's about 20% of the way finished. I want to talk about some trends we're seeing. I want to talk about some things from around the NHL, and then two predictions. I'm going to have like 8 things I want to talk about and 2 predictions. So let's go ahead. We'll dive in. We'll start at the top because why not? That's how I do it with the news videos and most videos, even the review videos, right? And the only, I mean, power rankings, you don't start at the top. So everybody goes, "Oh, they're number one." Well, the heck with this video. The NHL currently, and I got this from Hockey Reference. The goals per team per game 3.08. So we're getting a little over 6 goals per game in total. Last year it was 3.01, but it was 3.08 the year before. So 2023, 2024, and this season the scoring is the same. So we've seen a lot of emergent point producers and scorers, but in general, the league scoring is right around the same as it was 2 years ago, and it feels like it's been trending down over the last week, but we do see those ebbs and flows along the way. 80% of the games are close. And I want to talk about this because it does feel like the way that hockey games are approached has changed over the years. And so these two items here are very similar, and we'll get into this. 80% of the games are close. I do think there is some parity. I also think this reflects systems. There are teams that aren't necessarily as talented as other teams, but they have systems that work to neutralize those more talented teams and to keep them in games longer than they otherwise would be. So there are some teams that are losing a lot of one-goal games, but they also may be teams that just don't have what they need to win those one-goal games. So they're in those games, they stay close, but they're not able to get the victory, right? Now, one thing, and I heard this on a game last night, it is one of the reasons why this board's before you. Coaches focus on getting points now. So because you get that point for the overtime loss and the shootout loss, if a score is close late in the game, you want to make sure you at least get a point. And I think what this has done is it has caused teams to maybe lose that killer instinct. I think it has allowed for more comebacks to take place because that team with the lead is playing a little different late in the game. It means that we get more goals 6-on-5. We get more tie games late and more overtimes. Now, what it also does is it keeps the standings closer together. So because you're saying we want to make sure we get points, you're letting that other team get points as well. So there's not as much separation. And if that's a battle against a team that's in your conference, you made sure that you're not getting much further ahead, or they're not getting much further ahead of you, depending on where everything is in the standings. But it's something that's really obvious to me, and it gets frustrating just how many times now I can go, yeah, these guys are going to score 6-on-5, because you can see the team that's got the 5 players on the ice. It's not like it was, say, 5-10 years ago, it feels like, with teams being able to lock down victories. And I do wonder if teams are playing this way the whole regular season, how could that potentially affect playoffs? Playoffs are a very different beast, but if teams are always playing this style where they're not piling on and suddenly they're not attacking and, okay, we got a 1-goal lead, so we're going to play back. I find it so odd that teams change the way they're playing when they're ahead. It's like you got ahead by playing a certain way. Why are you playing this containment way, which will give that other team very likely a chance to tie it, and then the game's going to overtime because you wanted to make sure you got points. You get 2 points for the win, though, and if you do it in regulation, that other team got nothing. So fighting always gets talked about. Fighting's been pretty consistent. So according to hockeyfights.com, we're on pace for 303 fights. So I looked at the number of fights they've counted. I put it against how many games have been played, and then I extrapolated that out for a 1,312 game schedule, and it comes out to 303. Last year we had 297. The year prior to that it was 311. Fighting's not going anywhere. We're not going to see a league where there's no fighting anymore in the NHL. The league has no intention of taking it out. The players don't have any intention on asking for it to be out. The union doesn't mind it. Fighting is just, it's a part of the game. And it is staying at that rate. Now, considering there's 1,312 games, if you're getting 300 fights between 1,312 games, that means a vast majority of games don't have fights in them. Keeping an eye on the coaches' situation in the NHL, I'm not entirely surprised. We saw a lot of new coaches brought in the offseason, so we haven't seen any fired as of yet. There's been rumblings about whether or not 1 or 2 jobs might be in danger, but nothing major. Last year we had 2 coaches fired before January 1st. And the first firing, I believe, was right around this time of the year, maybe a week or two later. And so we'll see if any firings take place over the next few weeks. I honestly don't know that there's any coaches that are in danger. Again, I go through just the accounts that I feel like are the most dialed in on who might be in danger. I don't get the feeling there's any coaches that are in danger at this point in time. But you guys can let me know your thoughts. Maybe as long as you don't come back and edit the post later, you can leave like a little post on the video and then come back months later and go, see, I was right. And as long as it doesn't show that it was an edited post because you came back and fixed it later to make it look like you were telling the future, there you go. Cap space. What's interesting is this year we have cap space available. I was excited before the season. I was like, cool, we can get trades. We can get actual hockey trades. Nope. We're not getting any trades of anything major. We get minor trades. We get future considerations. Stopgap measures for teams when they're short on players. I kind of consider Reichel in Vancouver to be kind of a stopgap move by them. Although he is a young player and that potential's there for him to develop into something more, it does feel like the market is very quiet. Every time I see an article on this team's looking for a scoring forward, good luck. The teams that have scoring forwards aren't really all that likely to give them away. And the scoring forwards who might be available are the guys who aren't scoring right now, or they're kind of good scorers, but their contract is insane. You would think with the cap space it would help, but so far we haven't seen any trades made. Celebrini Bedard. So as we're winding down the Ovechkin Crosby era, right? We know they're not going to play forever. Is Celebrini Bedard the new rivalry? Or can it not be the new rivalry because not in the same division? If it has to be two players in the same division, is it going to be Macklin Celebrini and Leo Carlsson? And does that rivalry work for the NHL since it's on the West Coast? So for a lot of people in the East Coast, when these guys are playing hockey, they're already asleep. It's been a discussion around NHL circles forever that teams out west, that players can kind of fly under the radar because people in the East don't get to see them play very often. But Celebrini Carlson, I think, could be a great rivalry, but so could Celebrini Bedard, even though they only play each other 3 times a year. Which, of course, for rivals in the same division, it's 4 times a year. Maybe that won't matter. Maybe that extra matchup won't matter. If San Jose and Chicago are both fighting for the same playoff spot, say a wild card spot, that rivalry could ramp up really, really quickly. But I do think it's something the NHL has to have in mind, right? We've had this Crosby-Ovechkin matchup forever, for 2 decades. There has to be something new to replace it with. And in terms of players, Celebrini is still very young. Carlson, Bedard, they're all still very young. So we'll see. Speed. Fast teams. Fast teams are winning right now. One criticism I saw of the Toronto Maple Leafs in an article today was that they don't have that foot speed that other teams have. Agreed. And that foot speed is absolutely ridiculous in the National Hockey League right now. Anaheim's the one that really, really impresses me. And since Colorado has no lack of speed either, I am legitimately excited about tomorrow night's game between Colorado and LA. I think that game is going to be absolutely fantastic. I think it's got the potential to be the best game we've watched this year thus far. To me, the real test for Anaheim was when they went into Vegas. And they were able to keep up with and hang with Vegas. And I was like, okay, these guys are legitimately the first place team in the division. Going against Colorado will tell us whether or not they're the best team in the West. So that could be a lot of fun. And speed. It's all about speed and transition. I've talked a lot about forechecking. Forechecking is still very prominent, and I think Florida's made that even more of a thing because of how Florida won this past season. But speed. Just that speed and skill is just absolutely just insane to watch. So those are the 8 things that I want to talk about that are noteworthy from this season thus far. I do think, so these are the prediction. This is the prediction part of things. There are going to be shocking snubs from the Olympic teams for Canada and the U.S. I was reading an article today on who the likely forwards are going to be for the Canada roster. And there are going to be some great forwards who are left off of both rosters for Canada and the U.S. The U.S. is probably going to be defensemen too, where we look and we say, wow, I can't believe that guy's not going to the Olympics. I did say the other day about Olympic ice. I know that they're not playing on like the huge ice surface that European teams have. Hockey seems to be moving towards the NHL model. So I understand that the Olympic ice surface now is the smaller ice surface. And you have to look at it from a ticketing perspective, too. You're able to get more seats in there with the smaller ice surface. And for NHL players, the smaller ice surface is something that they're very familiar with. And it does feel like hockey is moving in that direction, which I know there are some European fans that really prefer the bigger ice surface. I'm not. I've watched games on the bigger ice surface, and of the two, I much prefer the NHL ice surface. But I am North American, and I am somebody who grew up watching hockey on that ice. So it would probably be very different if I grew up in Europe and I'd watched games in the SHL or the DEL or in Liga and watch those larger ice surfaces, watch the games on that. The whole parity conversation, so the 80% of games being close and everything, that's going to get tested later this season very simply by this schedule and just how compact it is, and then the injuries we're going to have. We are going to have injuries from the fact that the schedule is so tight. And not only that, but for players who get hurt and maybe they miss a couple of weeks, instead of missing 4 or 5 games, they might be missing 6 or 7. So some of these injuries are actually going to cause players to miss more games than they normally would because of how compact the schedule is around that 3 weeks off that the NHL takes for the Olympics, which I'm already thinking about, like, what I'm going to do for that 3 weeks during the Olympics. Haven't really decided as of yet how that's going to look, but I'm kind of thinking I could just have fun with it. We're not planning on a vacation at this point during that February time. It's possible that changes between now and February, but the parity in the NHL is going to be tested by everything around that Olympic schedule. And for the teams that don't have the depth to deal with and absorb those injuries, they're going to have their struggles while top guys are out or just the sheer amount of players are out causes them trouble. So for the teams that have a lot of depth, this insane schedule should be a benefit to them, comparatively speaking, with other teams, because they can absorb those big injuries and still come out of it with a pretty decent record. So there you go. Just 8 things I wanted to talk about from this season so far, and 2 little predictions for all you fine people on the internet. I had a couple of other ideas for videos to do today, and I thought I'll do this first, and then the other ideas can go for later, where I talk about a player from each team who I think's been underrated, who I think's having a really strong start, that kind of thing. And yeah, so that video will be coming soon, but I wanted to talk about this today. Thank you guys so much for all your support as always. Hit like and subscribe in the event that you may not have done so already. Thank you guys so much for helping this channel pass 366,000 subscribers. Absolutely ridiculous numbers. And I thank each and every one of you who watch, who comment, who share. It's great. And yeah, for all the new subscribers, welcome. That being said, I'm done for now. I will talk to you again soon.